guys, and welcome back to another video on my channel. Before we get into today's video, I do just want to say that usually when I film lately, the house is completely empty besides the dogs. So sometimes you can hear dogs barking in the background. However, today the house is full. I usually try to avoid filming when there's people home. However, this is the only time that I could film today's video and I did not want to miss it. So if you can hear a little bit of noise in the background, please just bear with me, but there shouldn't be too much because they know I'm filming. So hopefully they cooperate on their end. But anyways, with that all out of the way, let's get right into today's video. If you've been on my channel for a while, then there is a good chance that you were here because of missing persons cases, and I did kind of take a step back away from those for a little bit. I just couldn't find any that really perked my interest and that I wanted to talk about on my channel, or that I could do any justice to at all. But I'm trying to kind of incorporate them more often again into my channel because I do know that some of you guys will really love these types of videos. Today's case is not just a cut and dry missing persons case, however. I do think that this one is extremely interesting. Today we're going to be talking about the disappearance of a man by the name of Stephen Kubacki, and this again just isn't a cut and dry missing persons case. It is extremely interesting and I'm really excited to share it with you guys today because this is a case that would be classified as missing 411. Stephen Kubacki was 23 years old at the time and he was living in Michigan. He was attending a school called Hope College, which was a very small Christian college that was located in the south shores of Lake Michigan. Stephen was described by friends as being brilliant. He was super intelligent, and many of his friends would even say that he was more free-spirited than others. On top of that, Stephen was an avid outdoorsman and he spent a lot of his time hiking and just being outside, whether that be by himself or in a group of friends. He was just always outside, and he was an avid outdoorsman, so he was really experienced in hiking, camping, everything that a normal outdoorsman would be practiced in. So when Stephen had decided to set out on a solo cross-country skiing trip, this was no surprise to his friends or his family or anybody who knew him really at all. This was something that Stephen did quite often, again, whether that be in a group of people or by himself. Just in this particular situation, he was going on a solo cross-country ski trip. This was in the Sugatuck area, and he was going to be going for only a day or two. He didn't plan on being out there for very long. Now, something that we do have to talk about is the exact date when Stephen set out on this trip is a little bit blurred. A lot of people who are involved in this case can't really agree on the exact day that Stephen had left. However, what is known is that this all took place in February of 1978. Now, something that's a little bit strange about this case is nobody was super alarmed when Stephen hadn't come home when he said he was going to come home. I guess maybe they had just thought that he went somewhere else, or he decided to stay out a little bit longer than he had expected on this ski trip. However, on February 21st, a snowmobiler was out just kind of doing his thing when he came across what he would describe as a very unsettling scene. He was driving through the same area where Stephen had been hiking when he came across two abandoned ski poles as well as an abandoned set of skis. There were footprints leading away from the ski poles and the skis, and these footprints were said to go on for about 200 yards and then just stop very abruptly, kind of close to a water's edge, but not as if the person was going into the water. They were far enough that you would have had to have continued to walk to have gone into the water, if that makes any sense. I hope that you guys are kind of seeing what I'm trying to paint for you in this picture here. The snowmobiler quickly called authorities, and once they arrived at the scene, they were able to quickly determine that all of this stuff had belonged to Stephen himself. However, there was really no evidence to suggest that anything had happened. They really searched the area and they really did investigate this case quite thoroughly, but without any evidence suggesting that anything else had happened in the case, they thought that maybe Stephen had somehow fallen into the lake, became a little disoriented, and then drowned. However, there was no evidence to suggest that this had happened, just those footprints that abruptly stopped pretty close to the water's edge. Now, at this point, most of Stephen's loved ones did believe that something was up. Many of them did believe the theory that Stephen had fallen into the water and passed away, but most of them believed that something else, whether that be more sinister or something along those lines, had definitely happened to Stephen. and majority of them did believe that at this time he was no longer going to be a part of the family, he was no longer going to come back, but that was actually not the case. Now there are a few things that we're going to go through in this case that I actually only saw on a few articles about this case, which I think are key pieces of information going through this. In the first week of March 1978, police received a strange phone call from Stephen's mother. She had called in saying that a close family friend had been receiving phone calls, and on these phone calls, whoever was on the other end kind of gave them a phone number and told them to call this phone number and that it had something to do with Stephen's disappearance. However, when they did end up making this phone call to the number that was given by the anonymous person on the phone, they had found that this number had been completely out of service. Allegedly, at this time, Stephen's mother started going through her phone records, and that is when she found that the number that had been given to the close family friend was a number that Stephen had called her from just a year earlier before he had vanished. Now, she had no idea whose phone this was or where Stephen was at the time, but she was able again to determine that Stephen had called her from this number a year earlier. Police started to kind of investigate this, and they were able to track down the person who had previously owned that number, and it was confirmed that that line, that phone, was completely canceled, so the number no longer exists. But who this person was and why they would even come up in this case has never been released to the public. However, the person who was calling the family friend who was giving them that person's number has never ever been identified. Now, I know that last part was kind of confusing, but I hope that you're kind of all keeping up at this point. So, Stephen's brother had also hired a private investigator because he did not believe that his brother had drowned. He believed that his brother had somehow taken off to Germany. There were rumors going around at this time that Stephen had 2 girlfriends in Germany as well as 1 girlfriend in France. So the private investigator was kind of looking into that, but they did pull flight records from that entire time that Stephen was missing, trying to see if anybody who would fit his description had gotten on a plane either to Germany or France, and there had not been anybody who even slightly resembled Stephen getting on airplanes at that time. Now, the reason that I'm sharing all of that information with you guys in today's video is because a common misconception in this case is that it wasn't properly investigated. However, that is not the case. This specific case was very, very well investigated by police. They looked at every single possibility. They kept in very close contact with all of Stephen's friends, all of his family, anybody he was close to. They tried to get into contact with these girlfriends in Germany as well as the alleged girlfriend in France, and they were really, really doing a good job in this case. They investigated absolutely every possibility, but when they couldn't find a single lead to point them in a direction that something had happened to Stephen, they figured that the most logical explanation in this case would be that he somehow fell into the water and drowned, and his body then floated off somewhere where they just hadn't found it yet, and that it would turn up eventually. It had now been about 15 months since Stephen had gone missing, and it was May 5th, 1979, when all of a sudden Stephen showed up on a Saturday night on a family member's doorstep, very confused with no recollection of where he had been. He said that when he kind of came to and realized, he was Stephen, he was in a field in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, which was 700 miles away from where he had originally gone missing. A piece of information that I find very interesting in this case is if you were looking at a map, you could pretty much draw an exact straight line from the point where Stephen had last been noted to be to the point where he had woken up in Pittsfield. When Stephen had came to in that field, he had no idea that he was missing, and he definitely had no idea that it had been 15 months without him being able to recollect absolutely anything. He was walking through a more populated part of the city when he walked past a newspaper, and that is when he saw the day's date, and his mind was probably just blown because he'd been missing for 15 months. He then managed to get himself to a family member's home in Great Bennington, and once he got there and he kind of explained that he didn't even know he was missing to this family member, he was then reunited with the rest of his family in South Deerfield. Stephen's family members were obviously absolutely shocked. They never thought that they were going to see Stephen again, and they all began to really intensely question him, but Stephen had no answers for any of them. He said that he had no idea where he had been for the last 15 months. He couldn't remember a single thing. Now, as you can imagine, this case was absolutely huge. The news was all over it, and obviously the media wanted to speak to Stephen. And once Stephen was kind of more comfortable again and kind of getting back to normal, that is when he did decide to speak to a few reporters. When he was talking to these reporters, he said that when he woke up, he was wearing clothes that he had never seen before. He had a backpack on him, and in this backpack was several maps that suggested that Stephen had traveled through Sacramento, San Francisco, Reno, Chicago, and Utah. He had $40 on him at the time when he came to. He also had a brand new pair of glasses, sneakers, and a t-shirt that was from a marathon that happened in Wisconsin. He told the reporter that when he came to, he had felt as if he had done a lot of running, and that he remembered absolutely everything up until the point when he vanished. He said the last thing that he remembered was it being very late in the night, and he started to get kind of worried. He was feeling a little bit scared because he was starting to become a little bit lost in the forest, and it was getting very, very cold. When asked what he believed had happened to him, Stephen said that he believed that the time gap was just caused by exhaustion and exposure. He did agree to seeing a medical doctor, and he was able to get a physical that proved nothing was really too wrong with Stephen, but he did absolutely object to seeing a psychiatrist. And to be honest, that is really all the information that anybody knows for sure about this case. Stephen is still alive and well today. He actually ended up becoming a psychologist himself, but he has since completely stopped talking about this. He gave that very brief interview with that reporter, which was what I was just relaying to you guys. But since then, his loved ones and him himself have just completely stopped talking about this altogether, and Stephen just really moved on with his life. So just like we do in all of these cases, now we're going to talk about some of the theories of what exactly could have happened to Stephen while he was missing for those 15 months. Now, a little bit of information that I myself think is very, very interesting, as well as many other people online think is also very interesting, is that Stephen vanished just on the borders of what is known as the southeastern area of a place that people call Lake Michigan's Triangle. This triangle is very similar to the Bennington Triangle, the Bermuda Triangle, all of the triangles really, because they all seem to kind of have the same generic things. This area was known to be a paranormal hotspot. There were a lot of UFO sightings there, unexplained shipwrecks, unexplained missing persons cases, and things that just didn't make absolutely any sense. So when Stephen's case started to more or less come into the light, that is when people started to believe that maybe on that night while Stephen was cold and lost, he had wandered into the Lake Michigan Triangle, and that all of this stuff that he can't remember over the span of 15 months had something to do with some paranormal activity, and that his case is definitely of the paranormal variety. Another theory in this case that a whole separate group of people strongly believe is that Stephen planned his disappearance by himself. They strongly believe that Stephen had somehow planned this and that he set up all of those little things to make his disappearance look very, very suspicious and as if something more sinister had happened to him. However, this is not the theory in this case that I personally believe. There didn't seem to be a whole lot of a reason why Stephen would want to disappear or run away from his life. His life was generally going pretty well at that time. He was getting a house. His dad was setting up this whole house thing for him. He also had a job lined up that he really, really was looking forward to. He had all of these really good things happening in his life, so it just wouldn't have made sense for him to have just ran away, in my opinion. There are also a few things in this case, like why would you even bother doing that? But that definitely is one of the theories that is quite high on the list of theories in this case. Another reason that I don't necessarily believe that theory is because if Stephen did want to vanish, he wanted to run away, why would he come back? I mean, maybe he ran out of money or he realized that he actually was quite enjoying his life. I guess that definitely could be a possibility, but to me, this one just doesn't seem too concrete. I personally believe that whatever is responsible for the missing 411 cases has a hand in Stephen's disappearance. This case has too many similarities, in my opinion, to the Danny FILIPPIDIS case, which I also covered on my channel. I'll have it linked below if you guys want to check it out. There's just too many similarities. I don't understand if Stephen had run away on his own accord. Why would he come back? There were just too many odd things in this case that I absolutely can't just explain away or wrap my own head around. Just people vanishing in the middle of the woods and coming back months or days later without any recollection of what happened is something that I personally cannot comprehend. But that is really all of the information that I have on today's case for you guys. Please let me know what you think of this case down below. I'd love to know your guys' opinions, especially on these missing 411 type videos. I really love to hear what you guys think, what you think happened, who you think could be involved, what you think could be involved. That is something that I personally am very, very interested in. So make sure to let me know what you think down below. But guys, that brings us to the end of today's video. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to comment down below what you'd like to see in my future videos. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on that notification bell so that you don't miss any future videos from me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.